Professor Mohan, welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow. It's a pleasure to be chatting with you today.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I look forward to the conversation.
So, Professor, I think countries like India are under immense pressure today to grow rapidly, to create jobs, to reduce poverty, and all this while being responsible, becoming more sustainable. I want to know, is there increasing pressure to balance both these goals, economic prosperity as well as climate and sustainability? Because these seem like conflicting goals to me.
Well, I think this has been one of the drawbacks, this misunderstanding, and it has been used as an excuse by some of the leaders to postpone the step forward towards sustainability. That is why in the evolving ideas of sustainable development over the last 30 years, I presented a concept called Sustainomics at the 1992 Rio Earth Summit, which had a triangle which said you need economic prosperity to raise the poor out of poverty, you need at the same time to protect the environment, and you need also to make sure that empowerment and inclusion, the society is protected as well. Now, this has evolved into the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. But remember, there are 17 of them. So the way we move forward is not by saying this versus that. Right. So economic prosperity should not be juxtaposed against climate or any of the other goals. We move forward in parallel on a broad front. And it is an integrated approach, and of course we leave no one behind, but we also leave no goal unsolved.
Fantastic.
And that is the answer. It's difficult to achieve, but we do not believe in zero-sum games. It is not climate versus jobs. I think we can solve the problems of poverty, hunger, ill health, and climate at the same time. We have the tools and the knowledge.
Fantastic. Professor, with the ongoing tensions happening in the Middle East, oil prices are, getting more expensive, and they're just getting higher and higher. I want to ask you, do you think this is a moment for countries, for economies to come together and really accelerate the push towards self-reliant energy systems?
It's not only in the area of energy. I think ever since COVID-19, not only businesses but ordinary consumers have realized that supply chains are extremely fragile. Globalization had pushed this to an extreme, and the vulnerability was very apparent when you had this pandemic. And what is happening now in the Middle East? With the Gulf of Hormuz being a principal choke point, but there are many others. You will see that countries will not give up international trade, but they will make sure that they are as self-reliant in terms of these supply chains as possible, but there is always a balance, because you cannot produce everything you want within your own domestic economy. So there will be some disruptions, but the way forward is a more, as you pointed out, more self-reliant economies. Even in a local situation, you will prefer vegetables and other supplies that are locally available rather than a distant source, even if it is within your own country. So the vulnerability brought about by COVID and now the Middle East situation, and inevitably future situations will balance or even reverse that initial drive to globalization of supply chains. It will not eliminate it, but I think that balance is much healthier.
Right. During such a global uncertainty, I think smaller businesses, MSMEs, are the most vulnerable ones in this case. Do you think we are paying enough attention to how this is impacting them, like how climate shocks, how geopolitical shocks are impacting smaller businesses and entrepreneurs?
I think given that smaller businesses and entrepreneurs produce such a large share of consumables.
Yeah.
And a lot of people locally depend on them. They don't all buy from, certainly the elites depend on a lot of products that are internationally produced, the multinationals, so on. But the small businesses are the backbone, small and medium-sized businesses are the backbone of any economy. So what do we do to protect them? I mean, there are many measures that have been proven over time. For example, during, say, inclement weather, if there are bad storms or hurricanes and cyclones, you have insurance, those kinds of, and governments can step in, because small and medium-sized businesses are very vulnerable economically, in the sense that they don't have deep pockets. Yeah. So if you help them to survive the bad patch, they can recover and continue. But beyond that, we have to also look at their special needs. And the capitalist system which says, well, if they can't survive, let them go under, that doesn't work. Because the small, that doesn't, it works, but in a bad way. It is unsustainable, because these small and medium-sized businesses are also creating a lot of employment. It is the income that is generated from that keeps a lot of families going, and those families in turn are consumers for other products. So if the small and medium-sized businesses collapse, it's not just them collapsing and the big, say, capitalists can say, oh, we are not affected, you know, yeah. We have deep pockets, we can continue, we can tithe. They will find that there are no consumers, the big corporations, to buy their products, because it is on a small scale that a lot of the income and the activities of the economy, the circular functions of the economy, producers and consumers carry out. So your question is very valid. I think we have to think of new ways as the world becomes more complex, not only to protect them from shocks, as you mentioned, but also technological disruptions. Because certainly AI, robotics, and so on, they are not only replacing people in certain jobs and skills, but they are also affecting the way that these small businesses carry on their activities. So they also should be not necessarily protected, but they should be educated to survive in this changing, disruptive evolution that is taking place.
You mentioned AI. I really need to ask you, how do you see AI, technology, sustainability intersecting, in the next few years or so?
Let's talk about digital technology more broadly, I think. I mean, it's an area that I work in. There are, like any other technological advance, both the pluses and the minuses, right? So the pluses are, as you well know, they improve economic productivity, they will create new job opportunities, and so on and so forth. The negative side is they will put burdens on existing businesses, throw people out of work, and so on, the negative side as well. So governments especially have a responsibility to protect on the downside and perhaps help on the upside. Protect against the bad,
right,
and enhance the good.
There's a lot of optimism around the green economy, EV transition, sustainable manufacturing, climate innovation. Tell me, do you see the rise of maybe completely new businesses, industries centered around sustainability and climate?
Yes, I mean, definitely all problems are also opportunities. You mentioned some aspects that global supply shortages, which we discussed earlier, certainly have highlighted the need for renewables. maybe some of the newer technologies like hydrogen, and which are emerging and so on. Even technology like nuclear, which had a very bad name with environmentalists. I don't think any technology should be just eliminated per se. I think we should look at the strengths and weaknesses, although I'm an environmentalist myself.
And in terms of corporates, do you think companies are viewing ESG as a genuine transformation, agenda in their agenda, or are they looking at it as, in terms of branding and optics?
I mean, to summarize, there are three things. Of course, some of them are doing the greenwash. I mean, they are saying, you use the word optics and so on and so on.
Yeah.
There is no harm in looking for strengthening your brand. That's fine. I always believe that you can make money provided you do good. And then, this is making money, being profitable is not a bad thing, because you have to be financially sustainable. So, if we eliminate the greenwash, some of these leaders have agreed with me on three things, and that was what I stressed in the seminars. One is that the triple bottom line, okay, and the triangle, that balance is essential for companies as they go forward. So although shareholders will look only for corporate profits, it is up to the management, and you use ESG, the old-fashioned word was CSR, and so on and so forth. These things change with the fashion, but it means roughly the same thing, that you're not only looking at the monetary side, but also the social aspects and the environmental aspects. Second point is that it's not so incompatible, right? For example, it's very clear that all the companies that are far-sighted feel that the green approaches are in fact very helpful. They are win-win. And energy efficiency is one of the oldest and the most effective. Why? Because you reduce energy use, you save the environment, but you also reduce your costs, so you increase profits, right? Yeah. And if you take care of your customers and your employees, you bring in the social side. So it's not so difficult for employers to do this. And once you explain that logic, it's easy to bring them on board on that, right?
Right. And finally, as someone who has had a front row view, on climate conversations, tell me, do you think the world today views climate as a serious economic and survival issue, or do we still have a long way to go?
I think we have a long way to go. Sorry to sound pessimistic, but I've worked on climate for also 30 or more years. And in fact, as vice chair of the IPCC, we received the Nobel Peace Prize, not as scientists, but because we made the connection between climate and poverty and sustainability. Right. So that is what qualified us for the Nobel Peace Prize, right? So this is in fact the key, that climate is one of 17 sustainable development goals. The number one sustainable development goals is poverty. Then you have health and hunger and all the other things. So we have to, as I said, we are coming full circle, ending with the same point I made at the beginning. We have to move forward on a broad front. The climate lobby are not fully on board with this yet, because they are full of passion. They want only climate to be at the forefront. I'm afraid it will not work unless we broaden the tent and tell other people that, hey, we are not only solving the problems of climate, but we can also help poor people. We can help poor farmers. We can improve the health of people, and so on and so forth at the same time, right? So it's not one versus the other. If we forget that, then climate will be pushed back, because that old fallacy will come up, well, if you spend money on climate, then we can't help the poor. It's not the point, right? Yeah. So we have to work together, have a broad tent, and We have the theories and the models to do it. It's just the lack of implementation.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Professor. This was a lovely conversation.
Thank you very much for the very pertinent and perceptive questions.
Thank you so much. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 14. We hope you enjoyed the conversations. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.